was at work and looking for any distraction. So I booted up the House of the Dragon on my phone. Yeah, you can do that these days. I wasn't sure I was even going to bother with this thing. But basically, HBO Max will send out the little notifications or whatnot. And so I was like, hey, maybe it would be interesting because for the purposes of Doomcock's show, I'm going to be reviewing the Power of the Rings. Now, that one, other than that, I just would not watch it because it's so blatantly obvious what's going to happen there. But whatever. But here with House of the Dragon, another prequel series to a property that was at one point absolutely excellent, and then it fizzled and pooped the bed. Now we all know the story. They ran out of Martin's books. He hadn't completed the series, which at the time you would have thought, well, he'd probably be either almost finished or maybe even finished by the time we get there. And no. So once they ran out of the original material, they had nothing, literally nothing. They said they had a meeting with the man, says, where we need to come up with something, so where's this going to go? And so he told them, apparently, he said, here's the basic outline of where this all goes. And he said, all right, we'll craft something out of that. And they did. But it's obvious they just wanted to hurry up, wrap it up in the hopes that they could jump ship to Star Wars. And of course, I'm talking about Benioff and Weiss, who were the big showrunners of Game of Thrones, and that no one would notice that they were something of a couple of frauds. Well, no, people noticed, and pretty much destroyed their reputation overnight, ended their deal with Star Wars. The one time Lucasfilm had some sense, like, whoops, we better back out of this, The odd thing about it is that the rumor was that they might have done a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy. And since that's already more or less been laid out through the video game series and then comic books and novels, there's plenty of material for them to go to be the basic backbone of whatever they would do, because they did fairly well with the original material for Game of Thrones. Obviously, it wasn't all them, but I mean, it functioned, it worked, and it was great. So maybe they could have cobbled something together. Of course, it's Lucasfilm, But there's some parallels here about the state of franchises and where they go. So a lot of the problems for Star Wars is that even when it's good, which right now that's primarily Mandalorian, that gave everybody hope again, and then they immediately trashed it and just burned it down again. But even when had that not happened and it's going along and you're getting some good Mandalorian Star Wars shows and all that, all roads lead to the sequel trilogy, and you're like, jeez. So wouldn't it be the same here? And there is a bit of a caveat here, because you can look at the conclusion of Game of Thrones that they presented, and the plot points there could have worked. It's just the amount of time that you put into it to tell it was nowhere near enough. Everything is just rushed. Suddenly Khaleesi's crazy. Oh, granted, her best friend and loyal aide is murdered in front of her. That would certainly make sense for her to want to kill Cersei, instead she kills everybody else but Cersei. Damn, Cersei dies, of course. Spoiler. But it, like daddy, like daughter here, and it's like, yeah, but you needed time to develop that, because it really, after all her struggles and everything she went through, it never broke her mind. you know, and you needed a whole lot more for her to get there, and it's just not there. And that's a huge problem with that. There's other things and idiot stuff about, you know, the vast distance of Westeros that was established, and then suddenly they're they're jumping between cities within a couple of minutes. You know, I mean, you know, it's just it was yeah, they just, you know, stupid technical things like that, but plot points like that, and the death of the Night King and all that. You know, that, you know, had you handled that better, I mean, ultimately the Night King's going to lose. You know that, but good lord, you might as well have him slip and fall on his own ice and butt his head. Hits his head on the toilet and dies, you know. But anyway, so House of the Dragon, watch the first episode. It's got all the stuff. It's the castle intrigue. You've got this succession of a king, and he wants a male heir. So right off the bat, is it going to be woke? Well, that's not enough to make it woke, but in this era, thanks to wokeness, anything that smells of it, you can immediately accuse it of. It's only one episode. It could very well go woke, and it's all, you know, woman power and this sort of thing. And it could very well be. But at the moment, that is in keeping with medieval era and stuff like that. They, you know, preferred sons to be heirs and stuff like that. And so, ultimately, but he has this daughter. And she's the new Khaleesi, see? And of course, the dragons are everywhere because this is like over 100 years in the past. And, you know, they've got all their dragons and Targaryens and all that. And it's fine. A lot of the performances are good. Matt Smith is very good in his role as the brother who would be king, but, well, now never will be. But he has this, it seems almost a little creepy, affection for his niece. I don't, but with Game of Thrones, you never know, you know. She seems to, and I guess they're insinuating that she has an interest in her female friend, so perhaps that's the deal they'll pursue with that. I who knows, and all that, but whatever. But ultimately, her father, the king, through a terrible series of events, pretty gruesome. And there's a lot of gore and gruesome stuff. And, of course, full-on orgy sex and all that stuff. But he chooses his daughter to be his successor. And so there you go. She's going to be queen. And they're like, oh, this has never happened before. And he says, yeah, well. But the thing of it is, they make a big deal about it, but it almost happened with his sister at the time his father was choosing, but he ultimately chose his son. So, well, they keep going with that. But, you know, everyone was wondering, would she be chosen? So the idea was already there and stuff like that. But anyway, that's how they basically end the show. But when he brings his daughter in to tell her what he's going to do, he says, there's things you need to know. And he shares with her secrets that the line of kings have had. And it talks about the prophecy of this dreadful winter that will come. And so that's what puts, he's like, oh, yes, right. This all leads to the ending of Game of Thrones. Which, you know, is like, he's like, oh, this terrible prophecy of a horrible evil that will fall upon the land. And it's like, well, yeah, it kind of does, and then it just sort of poops the bed, and you're fine, you know. It kind of just stays in the north. There's a battle there, but don't worry. A little girl takes care of it. You don't have to worry about it too much. And, you know, but this is the terrible secret, you know, of the burden of this prophecy and whatnot. So it doesn't really hold the weight that it should. You know, continue, because the whole damn Game of Thrones show, the buildup was, you know, the real enemy was this, you know, god of death versus the god of life and fire and all that. And it just, you know, it doesn't really matter. So, but the big difference between that one and Star Wars is that the Star Wars plot points for the sequel trilogy were terrible. They were all over the place. They really didn't have any. It was just throwing things up against the wall. Whereas Game of Thrones did have specific plot points. It's just the delivery was terrible. The odds that they would reshoot the ending Game of Thrones, which a lot of people wanted, there was I think there was a petition and everything. But then, if George R. Martin would just write the damn books and say, no, this is the way it really ends and it works better and all that, maybe. But so I guess if you just keep to the plot points and say, well, it could have been better and I'll just pretend that it did. And that's how you can enjoy House of the Dragon. Which it's just one episode, could be a very good show. The problem, of course, is where it goes. But right now, a lot of people seem to be fine with that because apparently they're claiming like 10 million people, I guess I was one of them, watched House of the Dragon. So it'll probably do well. And then so that, it'll beat out Rings of Power. So I guess you got that going for you too. But that's it. I think that's the if there's a split there between the comparisons and the parallels between Star Wars and Game of Thrones, is that Game of Thrones at least had plot points that could have worked had it been handled better, and it would have needed more seasons there. And if Benioff and Weiss wanted to jump ship, go ahead, hand it off to someone else. But arrogance and possessiveness, I guess, I don't know, wouldn't do that. So, because I believe Game of Thrones would have been, yeah, fine, do another season, yeah, it's great. Let's keep milking this cow. And so they could have done it, but they didn't. And we see the result. So, but that's the deal. The plot points were certainly capable. It's just the execution was so bad and terrible, it just destroyed it. Whereas Star Wars never had any of the plot points for their sequel trilogy. So that's the difference, and perhaps that comes through for House of the Dragon.